All right, guys. So once again, today's class is going to be going over top-down analysis and also how do you know when to trade and when not to trade. Okay, so let's go ahead and break it down. We're going to start with top-down analysis. Okay. Who can tell me what top-down analysis means? Anybody want to put it in the chat? Just a quick little definition. Doesn't have to be anything major. Higher time frame to lower time frame. Perfect. All three of you guys got it, right? It's simply starting on higher time frames to lower time frames. Okay. Now, here's another little disclaimer that when it comes to time frames, no one can really tell you what's a high time frame and versus what's a low time frame, right? That's really up to you. It depends what type of trader you are. Remember, we talked about this. The first question you got to ask yourself when it comes to trading is what type of trader am I? Am I a swing trader? Am I a day trader? Am I an intraday trader? Or am I a scalper? Right? That comes up to you. Okay. I'm personally am an intraday trader, so we're gonna treat it like that, right? As intraday perspective. Okay. So the first thing you want to do when it comes to top-down analysis, so we're going to make a little list and then we're going to get into the actual charts going over it, is simply determine our higher time frame bias. Who can tell me what that means? What I mean by higher time frame bias? Excuse me. Friend, perfect, right? Are we bullish or bearish? Okay. Right? Are we in an uptrend or a downtrend? Right? Simple, right? That's what we want to start with because that's your overall like direction, right? So let's say we're looking at GA, right? That's the pair we're going to start off with. Let's say we're in an uptrend like this. On for me, the highest time frame that I go to is the daily. Okay, so let's say we're like this. Okay, and price. Actually, let me read y'all that one more time. Apologize. And price is right here. Okay, what are we going to be looking for if price is right here and we're in an uptrend? Higher high, yeah, but overall, just what in general? Where do we expect the market to go from here? Up, right? We expected to create a higher low. Now, it may not be exactly right there, right? Obviously, we got to get into that with points of interest and stuff, but, you know, price eventually, we want to catch some buys before price to push up. Let me draw that a little bit better. Right? We expect price to end up pushing up and continue the uptrend, okay? So your first step is to determine your bias, okay? Your higher time frame bias. Now, what's the second step? Does anyone want to take a guess? Once we determine our bias, what's the next thing? Not point of interest just yet. There's one thing we want to break down before we look for points of interest. Okay, because remember, the last thing we just did was we were on the daily, right? If I'm an intraday trader, I don't necessarily want to be trading off the daily, right? So we determined our higher time frame bias. What's the next step? Someone said trend liquidity, move on to the lower time frames and look for what? OB, not just yet. Before we look into point of interest and liquidity and all that, what's one more thing? Do you guys know? Someone said schematics. So kind of, but we're going to get into lower time frame bias. And what I mean by that is it can be schematics, right? It can be exactly, like you said, but essentially market structure on lower time frames. Okay. Now, what do I mean by market structure? Well, like I said, it can be schematics. Let me put that over here. Schematics. It can be trend again, right? And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper. And it can just be overall or phase. Okay, like what phase are we in? Are we expansion? Are we in contraction? Are we in a retracement? Are we in reversal? That's what we got to look for on the lower time frames. Okay, because again, if we're in an overall uptrend on the daily and price is right here, do we want to just buy right away? No, right? We want to look at the lower time frames and make sure the lower time frames confirm that, right? And they're going to agree with it. Okay, because if not, right? Or why do we want to wait for that? How do we know that the lower time frame is going to be able to agree with that before we buy? Anybody know? How do we know that the lower time frame has to agree before the higher time frame makes the move? What's that word? Price is what? Starts with an F. Fractal, perfect, right? We know that for us to get a higher time frame move, we have to get that lower time frame move first, right? So for us to get this buy, right, and maybe break structure, like let's say, because again, price would be more like this coming down. Before us to get that break of structure on the daily, we need to get a break of structure on the 15, right, on the 5, right, on the 1. Okay, we need to know that we have to get that lower time frame bias to match our higher time frame bias. Does that make sense? Go to drop some 7s in the chat. That makes sense. Okay, so when it comes down to lower time frames, you want to look at market structure. Okay, so one more time, I'm going to draw. Let me use a different color. Let's use red. Okay, so this is our daily structure. We're in that uptrend. Okay, but let's say when we go down to the 4 hour, we're going to see stuff like this. Well, let's say this is the hour. It's going to be more like the hour. Okay, and we're going to continue up like that. Ooh, that was, I don't want to erase it all and redraw it, but you guys get the point, right? So let's say I drew this right here. Okay, so everyone knows what we're thinking. That's the section I drew. Okay, so for us to get this higher time frame push up, we know we gotta get lower time frame, right? So what we see is possible schematics, right? I don't want to get too much into schematics because this is a sophomore class, but you guys, again, we're looking at structure. Okay, we want to look for the trend. Does the lower time frame trend agree with the higher time frame? Higher time frame trend. Okay, so if we're in an uptrend, and let's say price is right here, right? If we're in an uptrend overall in the daily, and price is live right here, okay. What are we in? What kind of phase are we in? I'll give you a hint. It's a sub phase, right? If we're overall in an uptrend and price is live right here, what sub phase are we in? Do you guys remember that class? Excuse me. If not, it's okay. We're in a retracement. Okay, so when price is pushing up and we're expanding in an uptrend, but price is pulling back and price is getting lower, that's called a retracement, right? That's our sub phase. So we know that if price starts retracing, and let me go ahead and actually draw this a little bit better. Right, so again, we're in an uptrend overall. When price comes down to that point for us to buy, it's creating that lower high, or excuse me, higher low, right? That's when we want to jump in on uptrends. So when it's retracing, that's a good sign that we're ready to buy. Okay, that's why we got to look at lower time frame structure, because if we're uptrending and price is just straight bullish, right, like GJ has been the last few days, where it's just been pushing up. Like last night, as soon as I saw this, and we're gonna break that down in a little bit, but like as soon as I saw price just pushing up and continuing the trend, there's no possible chance for me to really get into the market, right? Because the move's already happening, it's already trending. Okay, so if we're looking for to jump in, we need that retracement or a reversal. Okay, does that make sense? Go to drop some 8s in the chat if that makes sense, and if it doesn't, please ask, because I want to make sure you guys understand that when it comes to lower time frames, we got to look at more than just trend and where the price is at. We got to look for structure, maybe a schematic trend, right? What phase it's in. We got to look at how the market is reacting. Okay, awesome. Okay, one thing I want to point out additional to this is that a lot of people, they'll see a point of interest, right? Let's just say price is doing something like that, boom, and there's like an order block right here. Okay, and if you guys don't know what an order block is, I'm sure most of you guys do, but if you don't, that's okay. Just bear with me. This is a point of interest. Okay, as soon as price comes and touches a point of interest, they're buying, right, automatically. Okay, and sometimes price will just explode through. They're not patient to go down to lower time frames and make sure that the lower time frames are agreeing. Okay, now either way, you can still get an agreement where like maybe price looks like it's setting up to buy and then it still blows through. That happens. We lose trades, but you want to make sure all confirmations are there before you take that trade. Okay, so the lower time frames are super important. Now I'm not saying you need to go down to the 1 minute if you're a swing trader, right? But you got to start looking at multiple time frames. Okay, does that make sense? Drop some 9s in the chat if you're still with me and you understand everything we got over on step 2. Oops. Okay, perfect. Right. So again, we got to start with our higher time frame bias. If this is the daily up here, we realize that it's in it's bullish. Okay, we're in an uptrend. And if this is, let's say, the 1 hour, we realize that we're also in an uptrend, and we're seeing what is price doing, right? And we see that on the, oops, let me redraw that. On the lower time frames at our higher low, we agree, right? We start seeing this type of schematic and prices breaking structure, creating liquidity, right? All that. Okay, so it agrees now we can start moving forward with the trade. Okay. Awesome. Let me delete all this now. Perfect. All right. So step number 3. Now, what are we looking for? Now that we determined our higher time frame bias, we went down those few to like maybe, so let's say this was the daily up here. Again, this is what I would do, right? This is my the way I trade because I'm an intraday trader. So let's say this is the daily and 4 hour. Okay. Down here, let's say we went down to the 2 hour, 1 hour. Okay. So now that we've done that, what is step number 3, right? Once we're here in intraday time frames, now what can we start looking for? And you guys said it earlier, points of interest. Perfect, right? We are looking for points of interest. Okay. We are looking for price to start setting up. Now, this doesn't mean you can't look for trades on the 2 hour and the 1 hour as an intraday trader, right? I still look for setups. Sometimes those beautiful 1 hour order blocks and stuff like that. Okay. So it doesn't mean you can't look for that. However, this is a good idea to start with and start looking at the order of what you should look at things. Okay. You want to look for the trend, the bias, the structure, right? What trend, the fades, all that. And then you want to start looking for your points of interest, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be in this order of time frames, right? It just has to be, or it doesn't even have to be, but this is the way I suggest you should look at it, right? Look at higher time frame bias, what's your trend? Lower time frame bias is your structure, your schematics, your trend still, okay? And then you want to get into your points of interest, okay? Does that make sense? Drop some ones in the chat if that makes sense. Okay, cool. Awesome. So let's get into it. Okay. So points of interest are obviously, order blocks, imbalances. Okay. Breaker blocks. Right. You guys know, points of interest, fib levels. Okay. That may not necessarily be a point of interest, but it can line up with your points of interest, right? You want to always line it up with your market structure. Okay. So stuff like that, right? That's what you want to start looking for now. Okay. So let's recap again, right? So we're in that daily uptrend. Okay. We know that. Lower time frame. We are in that retracement, and let's say there's now possible order block right here. Okay. And in the past, it is something like this, right? Okay. We see the liquidity, price shot up, right? And again, I don't want to break down liquidity and order blocks just yet, but again, that's our point of interest. Okay. Just keeping it simple right now. This is our point of interest. So now that we know the trend, we're in an uptrend. The lower time frame is now agreeing because, again, what type of phase are we in? Remember, we talked about it. What type of phase do we want to be in for us to actually jump in the market? Subphase. Retracement, perfect, right? We want that retracement because it allows us to use our fibs and stuff, right? If you guys saw my GA trade when I sent it in the chat, I had my fib. I'm gonna use this little tool, pretend it's a fib. But I had my fib from the low to about this high. Okay. I went to bed and I woke up in the morning. That price actually shot up a little bit higher, but then came down and it still hit entry, right? And it still tapped beautifully. But again, my fib was off just a little bit. If we wait for that retracement, that full retracement, now our fib is going to be, pretty good, right? It's going to be a good placement of that fib, if that makes sense, right? So instead of price going up a little bit higher and me putting my fib a little early, I could have waited a little bit and waited for this full retracement now and tap a good fib level, if that makes sense. Okay. I don't want to confuse anybody. I know that was kind of a bad explanation, but just to show you guys, the retracement is powerful because that's going to allow you to actually look for that valid setup. Okay. So that's what we want to look for. We're in the retracement. We see our point of interest as our order block, our imbalance is up here. Again, that's a deep fib level. So everything's looking good. So we determined our higher time frame bias, lower time frame bias, and now we're looking at points of interest. Okay. So does that make sense for 1 through 3? Go ahead and drop some 2s in the chat. That makes sense. Okay. So let's go ahead and delete this now. And the final step is, again, this is all my recommendations and stuff, would be to check risk to reward and confirmations. Okay. And what I mean by confirmations is, yes, we already have our order blocks and stuff, but simply just go back and double check is what I mean by that. Okay. What are your confirmations? Go through your checklist. Like, okay, is there an order block? Is there an imbalance? Is it a deep fib level, right? For me, I will not take a trade that hasn't pulled back deeper, or at least to the 0.71 or deeper. Okay, that's just one of my rules. If it doesn't line up, even if it's just off by a little bit, I will not take the trade. Okay, it's just, that's going to help you stay disciplined and, show you that, more likely than not, your points of interest are going to line up in that area, right? That's just what I've noticed from my trading. That's why I do it. Okay, so if it's not there, then maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay, and that's, again, just you got to determine your confirmations and how you're going to trade. Okay, because at the end of the day, when it comes to trading, whatever works for you is going to help, is what's best for you, right? What I mean by that is, like, the way I trade, if it doesn't make sense, then it's not the best way to trade for you, right? You have to, like, completely throw everything I'm saying to you out the window and learn from James or learn from Mustafa, right? What I mean by that, right? So, like, if I say, like, hey, look for order blocks and imbalances, but you can't find them and you're better at looking for breaker blocks, look for breaker blocks. Okay, does that make sense? Drop a 3 in the chat if that makes sense. I know I kind of went off topic there for a second, but that's super important. I want to make sure you guys understand that, like, the biggest thing about trading when it comes to strategy is what works for you. Okay, you may take a little bit from me, a little bit from Garrison, a little bit from Jay, right? Whoever may be, maybe one of the other students that you learn from. Okay, but again, whatever works for you is what's best. Okay, but let's get back into this now. Check for your risk reward and your confirmation. So, like, make sure your confirmations are there, right? Make sure it's the correct time to trade. And what I mean by correct time is, like, not just session times. Like, I'm not saying that, like, I mean, this is good to know, but, like, let's say you're taking AUD, NZD during New York, right? Most likely it's not going to be a lot of volatility because the banks aren't open, right? So you may not be analyzing the correct thing, right? So that is one, make sure that's a confirmation that you should have, that make sure that's the right trading time for those pairs. But also, I would say make sure it's the time that you scheduled for you to actually trade. Okay. Like, there's some times where, I'll be done with whatever I'm doing prior hand and I'll have some free time and I'll open up the charts and I'll be like, oh, that looks like a good setup. But it's not. I'm a London trader, right? If I'm doing that in the middle of the day, that's not going to work for me, right? That's not during my time session, right? The correct time that I'm supposed to be trading, that I put in my trading plan, right? So I can maybe mark it up, maybe put it on a demo, but I'm not going to take that on my live account. Okay. Because again, I want to stay disciplined and make sure all my confirmations are there. Okay. So that's one of my recommendations to you, is that make sure you're only trading within your few hours a day that you've actually said that you're going to trade. Okay. Again, that's just my recommendation. Um, Another thing I wanted to add here was about my notes. Sorry, guys. Oh, risk reward, right? Obviously. Okay, so we want to talk about risk reward. You want to make sure that, for me, again, it's my recommendation is must be a 1 to 3 or greater. Okay, so if I have a great setup, everything's lining up, everything looks good, but it's a 1 to 2.999. I'm not gonna take it. Okay, that's just my rules, again, to stay disciplined. Okay, so just make sure all of these are there, and then from there, if everything lines up, take the trade. Okay, that's how I would suggest a top-down analysis, right? Not just, from the higher time frames to lower time frames, but what to look at each level. Does that make sense? Go ahead and drop some fours in the chat if that makes sense. Have you ever readjusted your trading times? Yeah, actually, I want to say almost 2 months ago, I tried trading in New York because I started doing some personal ventures on the side of trading and stuff, and so I thought it would fit my schedule better. I didn't like it though. All right, it didn't fit. It wasn't flowing, so I went back to London, and obviously, I feel like London is a lot better fit for me. Okay, so yeah, I have. If you feel that you're not doing good in a trading session, I would suggest try trading or try changing your session time, but at least give it a week or two, right? Give it some time to actually get in the flow of it, right? And I feel that I did. I did 2 weeks of New York and I just didn't like it, right? It did not flow with me, right? So I like London. So yeah, just want to let you guys know. Cool. Alrighty. So again, I hope all that makes sense. Feel free to screenshot this if you'd like. I should actually screenshot it and I'll drop it in the chat later as well. Okay, cool. Awesome, guys. So that's my, suggestions on how we should look at the market from top-down analysis. Okay, so let's go ahead and break it down now. Let me bring up the screen. Cool. Go ahead and drop a 5 in the chat if you can see the screen. Cool. So this was the GBP AUD trade that we took, right? So let me go ahead and bring up the markup. Okay, is it right here? This one. Here we go. So GA, right? I dropped this last night during London. Okay, and I saw this setup. Okay, so what we saw was price was downtrending. Obviously, took liquidity, gave my order block and my points of interest of my imbalance. Price shot up, and I put my fib here. Okay, again, I'm not gonna break too much about points of interest and stuff. But then we saw. Let me get to it. Apologize, guys. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. Then we saw what? Price. See, this is what I was talking about when I said my fib actually went a little bit higher because I didn't wait for that retracement, right? Once we see this big drop, that's our retracement. Okay. So I was a little early on my fib setting. Either way, though, it hit my point of interest, that little imbalance, and shot up, and that was it. That was all she wrote, right? I don't remember exactly how many pips. We can look at it now because that's what we're gonna break down. Okay. So I want you guys to now see my thought process of how I found this trade. Okay. So I started on the daily. Okay. And I zoomed out. And what I noticed was like, okay, I don't want to zoom out all the way over here, right? Remember, I'm an intraday trader. If I come all the way back here and I'm considering, time from 2013, that's not an intraday perspective, right? That's not what I want to look at. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I like to reset my chart. So if you right click and you click Alt R or click Alt R, excuse me, and just click reset chart, it gives you a nice little frame. Okay. I'll zoom out a little bit and I see that price was overall downtrending. Okay. But now it's just ranging. Okay. Again, I'm an intraday trader. I don't need to be concerned with everything past here, especially if it's just ranging. I need to find my range that makes more sense to me now. Okay. And I would suggest that just as an intraday perspective, I would only be concerned with this, if that much, right, for GA. Okay. So this is what I'm looking at. So I see that overall we are uptrending. Okay. In this little section. Okay. But again, intraday perspective, this was back on the beginning of April. It's about to be May. So again, I'm not too concerned with that far back. So I'm zooming in more. I see the downtrend. Okay, up, push down, right? It hasn't broke structure to the uptrend, right? So this is what I see. Okay, so overall we were in this uptrend. Price created that higher low, higher high, and then we got a breaker structure. We got a lower low. Okay, so that is a downtrend now, right? So I see the downtrend. But then I see price push up and it pulls back to about this level. Okay, I see price come down, and this is a perspective for a possible buy order block. Okay, so yes, I think overall we're in a downtrend. Okay, but as an intraday perspective, I start to see that this is a buying point of interest, meaning that we could possibly get a retracement overall. Okay, does that kind of make sense so far? How much do you consider for a daily time frame? Like 5 business days? So it kind of depends, and that's why I'm trying to break it down. I'm not going to consider obviously more than a month, right? I'm looking at right now. So honestly, the way I see it is my range right now is from here to here, or if you wanted to, you can consider it from there to here. Okay, that's honestly up to you. I personally started considering it from here to here, and my thought at first was that we were downtrending. Okay, but again, this is the daily. That's overall. I still agree that we are downtrending. Okay, but I see some possible liquidity and stuff up here that we could possibly come catch. But as of right now, I think overall it is a possible downtrend. But again, we see a possible point of interest right here for a buy for that pullback. So I'm thinking bullish. That's what's going through my head. Does that kind of make sense? Drop some sevens in the chat if you kind of see what I'm saying. Okay. This is one thing I want to break down for you that it may be a little confusing, and that's why I'm trying to break it down as simple as possible. But smart money is subjective. Okay. So if you're thinking just downtrend, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Wait for those downtrend moves. But me, I was looking for the opportunity to buy the retracement, if that makes sense. That messed me up a couple of trades ago. Yeah, so I was thinking, okay, we're downtrending, but then I saw that this was a possible buy. Okay, now I wouldn't buy it because I don't see a break of structure. Again, overall, I think we're downtrending, but I think it could be a possible retracement buy as an intraday perspective. Okay, so now let's go down to lower time frames. Okay, so now that I've determined that, let's go to the 4 hour. Okay, and what do I see on the 4 hour? Again, each of these candles are 4 hour time frames, right? So if I'm looking at here, if I'm trying to trade within a day, right, I don't need to be concerned about what happened a week ago, right? Or this is 3 to 4 days ago. Okay. Price is pushing up. Now, yes, I think price can come deeper. Let me fix this a little bit, sorry. Okay, price could come deeper and retrace, but what I see is that, look, price came here and tapped a possible buying point of interest. Okay, so again, I know I told you guys to mainly look for the structure, right? But that's what I'm trying to break down. So I guess you can look at for points of interest on these other time frames, but really I'm looking at for structure, right? So overall, yes, we were downtrending on the higher time frames, but I see that price looks like it's going to give that retracement to the upside. So I'm bullish, right? I'm looking for that bullish trend. And what do we see? Price is creating that bullish trend to the upside here on the lower time frames. So now when I get to like the 1 hour and maybe even the 2 hour, I think I skipped the 2 hour though. Now I'm looking for buys, and we see right here, there was that breaker structure. Okay, so when I see that, that's the confirmation that, hey, we're going to be looking for buys. Okay, so before I move on, does that make sense? It did do a higher low. Based on, yes, so okay. On the higher time frames, it did create a higher low, but remember, you can't confirm a higher low until there's a higher high, right? So for us to get a higher low, we'd expect this to make a higher high and then create the higher low. So I wouldn't consider that a valid higher low just yet, because price, honestly, what I'm thinking is that price is going to retrace up to here and then drop more. That's the way I'm looking at it. Okay. But so again, I looked for that retracement buy, and that's what we got here. We got that breaker structure now, and now we're looking for price to give us that play. Okay. Now looking at the hour, I could have fibbed it from here. All right. I could have been like this and like, okay, look, we're not trying to trade anywhere higher than that. What I realized is that price is creating more structure up here. There's more liquidity up here. Now we're starting to look for points of interest. Okay. So I go down to the 30, and let me play it out just a little bit more, because I actually saw a price when it was over here. I believe I put my fib right there at first. Okay. So this is what I saw. Now looking at this, we see that price is pushing up, and then we start seeing points of interest. Okay. I start seeing liquidity here, right? There wasn't much liquidity here because this kind of broke. It wasn't equal lows, I would say. But we see that price created equal lows here, a lot of it, shot down and then spiked up. Okay, even though on the higher time frame that wasn't a huge retracement, again, I'm an intraday perspective. I'm looking at these lower time frames for the actual moves. Okay, and look, you see where my take profit is. It's not high at all. I'm not trying to say that, oh, we're going to shoot up 300 pips, right? I'm looking for a little quick intraday move, like that takes maybe a couple hours, right? Or maybe at most 8 hours. Okay, so I was looking for it, and we see that price did break structure. Okay, however, we also see that there's a lot of imbalance right here. Okay, that's confirmations. Okay, again, I don't want to break them down too much, but then we see the order block. I go down to lower time frames, looking for confirmations. We see the 15 has a beautiful imbalance sitting right between these time frames, or excuse me, these candles. And we go down multiple time frames. We see that imbalance holds. Okay, so we see liquidity was captured, my order block, my imbalances. I see my points of interest and my confirmations. I see that price is on the lower time frame continuing that uptrend that we determined that we were going to be in an uptrend for that retracement. And look, I'm not trying to create a huge take profit. My take profit is only 75 pips. Okay, and now we let it play out. Price drops, taps, and boom, took off. Right, and I think it took about 3 hours, if that. Okay, so do you guys kind of see the process? It may be a little confusing if you guys don't know the confirmations and stuff, but if that kind of made sense to a little bit of degree of how I broke down each time frame, go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat. I don't remember what number we're on. Excuse me. If you guys have questions, please ask. Okay. This may have not been the best example to break down, but it was one of the trades that I caught last night. Okay, I think I'm going to go over GCAT also, and I think that might be a little bit easier to follow. All right, awesome. Okay, so again, I was looking for, as an intraday perspective, I was looking for that intraday buy, and it looked to be retracing. So the retracement on the, so okay, let me repeat that. On the daily, I saw a possible downtrend, right? Overall, 4 hour possible downtrend, but I started seeing that retracement buy. Go down the lower time frames, everything's showing me that, hey, it is actually buying, right? And as an intraday perspective, I want to be concerned with the hour and lower. Okay, that's again my recommendation and what I do. Okay, so once I saw this, we saw clear points of interest. price pushed up, came back in that retracement. Again, I should have waited for at least this drop or so for actually me to put my fib, because I think I put it right here a little early. But either way, the fib, remember, it's a tool. It's not necessarily going to tell you exactly where price is going. Okay. Either way, we see that my point of interest lined up with what I call a perfect pocket, which lined up with that 786 and 886. Okay. So cool. That's how I caught this trade last night. Now GCAD, I marked up, but I missed it. Okay, I'll be honest. I completely forgot about it. I didn't set an alert. That was dumb, and I missed it. Okay, so let's go ahead and check it out. So this one may be a little bit easier to follow. So again, started on the daily. What do we see? Kind of in this range. But again, I'm more concerned about where price is at now. And I think price was live. Let's just put it right here for right now. Okay. Looking at this, we see that price pushed up, came down, and just made a lot of equal lows, and then came down and broke through. Yes, it shot up, but then we see price is just pushing down here in this daily candle, right? It's pretty much at this low. At this point, there's no point for me to say that, hey, it's going to reverse, right? It's going to go to the upside, okay? So I see that we're downtrending, okay? This one just looks completely downtrending based off the intraday perspective. Now, we could possibly buy later on, but again, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about what's going to happen during this London session, okay? So I'm looking at it now. I go to the 4-hour. Okay, and again, we just see prices pushing down. Okay, nothing's telling me anything different now. As a 4-hour perspective, I'm personally only going to look from here down, right? We're just downtrending. Okay, that's, nice and clear. Nice downtrend. 2-hour. What do we see? Downtrend. 1-hour. And let me play it out a little bit because I started seeing more of this. Okay, more just downtrend, right? So again, now price is starting to range. I'm coming down to my time frames that I'm actually looking for, points of interest and stuff, okay? So I'm here on the 30, and what I start to notice is equal highs were made, okay? I think it was clear on the 15. Excuse me. Now, I know some people are going to say this kind of looks like accumulation schematic, right? Where we start seeing our selling climax, secondary test, okay? Sign of strength. But again, one of the big things I point out on Wyckoff is you have to be patient and let price set up, right? Let phase A and phase C play out. If we don't get that spring just yet, we're not looking to jump in, okay? So what I saw was that price was pushing up, creating these equal highs. If we got a spring, I may have been looking for something different, but we got actually price pushed up higher, cleared those equal highs, gave us some heavy candle down, okay? Remember, every time frame I've looked at so far, we're downtrending, okay? Now that I see prices creating equal highs, equal highs, I'm looking at it for a possible reversal or a continuation, right? We got to see what price is playing out. Okay, so this one was a 1 to 3, almost 1 to 4, right? 9 for 33, right? Quick little move. So what I saw was, again, price shot up. I started looking for my points of interest. One, we got the break of structure right here, right? Price shot up, cleared liquidity, dropped, broke structure. Cool. Price is now retracing. I throw my fib from the high to the low. Price is now pushing up, okay? My points of interest came from the 10-minute, I believe. Yeah. So this candle here was my order block, shot up, came down. We left some imbalance that lines up with the opening of the order block. This looks like a beautiful setup. Take profit is just at the lows, right? Again, it's not a long-term move. It's just because, again, it could be possible accumulation. I'm just trying to take the move that the market's giving me right now. Okay, I'm not going to be greedy. I'm not going to try to force anything. Okay, I'm just taking the move that the market's giving me. So now I'm waiting. Let's let price play out. I think the last thing I saw was probably right here. And again, I forgot about it. I was looking at GA and other trades, forgot to send an alert. And look how beautiful this was. Beautifully just came up, tapped. There we go. Okay. Try to make it a little bit more clear. This wick right here on this black candle shot up, tapped up just a few pips above, and just dropped. Okay. Boom. Beautiful trade. Price ended up coming back up, mitigating a little bit higher. That's perfectly fine, right? It obviously didn't hit our stop loss, and then came down, and boom, took off. It actually came back up one more time and tapped that same area before taking off again to where we're at now. But you guys see how that trade play out. Okay. Does that make sense? Drop some 2s in the chat if you kind of see how I broke down this trade. I should have started with this one. I feel this one was a lot more simpler. Every time frame showed downtrend. We saw that price pushed up, did break. You can consider this a break of structure to the upside, but then what did price do afterwards? Broke structure to the downside. So now, looking at it as a smart money perspective, we know why it broke structure to the upside to capture liquidity, and now it needs to be mitigated. And price actually came back 3 times to that area. And if I would have possibly held this trade for even longer, like to where it's at now, it wouldn't have hit my stop loss, right? It would have just came up and tapped the same area. Okay, does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about this one? Let's just focus on this one right now because I feel like this is a lot more simpler to understand. Okay, so this one again, this one was, I should have started with this one. It was every time frame was showing downtrend. We saw the confirmations now in the lower time frames for us to actually look to jump in, right? We saw that price created points of interest by taking liquidity and stuff like that, giving us our order blocks. Then it gave us that retracement right here. We looked to jump in and boom. Nice little 33 pip move. Nothing major, but awesome, awesome. Cool, cool. So now I want to talk about, well, first off, one more time, if that made sense from top down analysis, go ahead and drop some threes in the chat of how I break down the market. And again, if you're kind of lost and it doesn't make sense to you, I mean, you could try it if you want. If it doesn't make sense, I would honestly suggest taking a different direction, right? Taking a different approach. Maybe you trade on higher time frames. Maybe you look for different points of interest. Maybe you're a breaker block trader, right? Whatever it may be. Maybe you don't look for schematics at all, stuff like that, okay? I'm not saying you have to trade exactly like me. That's my suggestion, and it works for me, okay? Awesome, awesome. Cool. So now I want to talk about when not to trade, okay? For this example, I'm going to bring up GJ, okay? That actually looks pretty good, but that's not what we're talking about. Let's go to the 4 hour, and I believe price was, let's actually go down to the beginning of this week, okay? Who remembers when I sent out this trade on GJ, right? It was actually on the 15-minute, I believe, 15 or 30. It just looks super clean, right? This looks like a beautiful trade that we were waiting for, okay? So I saw this playing out. Now, again, how did I mark this up? Well, what I saw was here on the daily, price was overall uptrending, right? Looking at where price is at, yes, it looks like price is possibly downtrending, but we hit a daily point of interest, okay? We hit structure on the daily, okay? So looking at it, yeah, it looks like it's a possible downtrend perspective in the intraday perspective, right? But we see that on the daily, we created a higher low, higher low. We're expecting a higher low on the daily. So we got to see now if price is actually going to reverse, okay? Now we go down to lower time frames. Here's the 4 hour. What does it give us on the 4 hour? Well, we start seeing a lot more consolidation. Okay, price shoots up, comes down, actually broke through. I tried buying here, I think last week, but it actually price broke through, came down a little bit deeper. Go down to 2 hour. Okay, we still see that price is consolidating. Nothing yet for confirmation to buy. Now we get to the 1 hour, we start seeing a little bit of breaker structure, maybe some equal highs. So now there's a sign that price may shoot up. And this actually looks like beautiful accumulation where we see our selling climax, secondary tests, and our spring. Okay, we get to the 30 and the 15, and we start seeing points of interest line up. Everything looks good. I put my fib on here. I considered this our breaker structure, even though it's not the major breaker structure. I considered it this part, and I was like, okay, cool. Price is going to start retracing, and we're going to take this trade. Then we saw price play out. Okay, boom. Price shot up here. I moved my fib. I was like, cool. Now we got the breaker structure. That look how beautiful the 786 lines up with that open of our order block. This looks good. Now I'm waiting. We know it's gonna buy, right? Everything lines up. The higher time frame looks like it's at, it's at daily structure. The 4 hours lining up, right? We start seeing consolidation. Now we're on the lower time frames. We see the breaker structure. Everything is lining up to the upside, right? So we're looking to take this trade. It looks good, and we let it play out. Excuse me. At this point, the trade completely gone, right? It just took off without us, right? So we're not trying to jump in this. Now, this is what I want to tell people is that like people get mad, and this is where your emotions come into check. You got to get rid of the fear of missing out because every single day, right? There's going to be new setups. There's going to be new moves. There's going to be new trades, right? So if you miss a trade, you miss a trade. As a as a disciplined trader, you want to trade with your confirmations. I was not going to jump in this trade unless we got to at least the 7-1, but honestly, not until we got to the 786. Okay, because that's where my setup was. So everything lined up. But again, rule number 4, you got to check your confirmations. This is not that deep pullback. Now, we could have looked for more plays like this. This hit like a possible order block and stuff like that. But I was waiting for this move, and it didn't happen. So guess what? Even though price took off and there we go. Even though price took off and shot up 280 pips from where we started marking up this trade, we're not jumping in unless it lines up with our confirmations, right? Again, you got to know when to trade and when not to trade. Now, I could have dove on deeper time frames, like the 15, right? And look at this one. This actually looks like a clean setup where price actually played this order block and shot up from there. But I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at the bigger move. I missed that move. That's okay. But again, if I would have taken that move, I wouldn't have held the whole move. I would have held from here to here. Okay. And let's look at that. So if I would have marked this trade up, we know we're in an uptrend, right? All time frames are showing us now that we're in an uptrend because the daily hit that structure point. Let me get rid of this fib real quick. Okay. We know that we're in an uptrend. We see that price already broke structure. Okay. We see that price dip down here, shot up, broke structure again. It looks clean, right? It's a nice clean setup. But what are we missing in this setup? It tapped that OB, that broke structure. Yeah, exactly, right? I believe you're talking about the same one here. But what are we missing in this setup? Why would I not take this trade? Excuse me. Anybody know? Look at the risk to reward. One of my rules is 1 to 3. Now that may not be your rule. Maybe you would have taken this trade and you would have won. But for me, again, my confirmations are telling me I cannot take this trade. That's not at least a 1 to 3. Now, if I would have lowered my entry to 786, like let's go down to the 10 or the 5, would that have been a good point of interest? Yeah, look at that. The 10 minute, if I would have went down to here, I could have set this up and I could have taken this trade. But if I would have just stopped on the 15, I wouldn't have. You know what I mean? But look, see how price actually played out. Actually, this was actually a nice trade. I can't believe I missed this. But hey, you're gonna miss some moves. Remember, you can't get caught up on missing moves, right? There's always gonna be new moves every single day. Okay. So this was a nice trade. But if I on the 15, we go back to it here. There we go. Okay. Go back to this. Oops. There we go. If they 1 to 2.48, I'm not taking this trade. Okay. So again, all I wanted to break down was when to know to trade, when no not to trade, is simply your confirmations got to line up. Okay. Now, when I saw GJ later on, like let me just clear all this. Okay, like yesterday night during London session, GJ was right here. Okay, so obviously we know we're in that uptrend. Price is pushing up, right? Obviously we see that price is trending, but remember we talked about for us to get in, we need that retracement. We need that lower, pullback for price to create that lower high, and we just don't see that. Okay, now we kind of see it here. If we waited at this part, this was at around 2:30 my time, which I could have been valid, but overall I just saw that price was trending. I don't see any points of interest really. So again, I'm not going to trade it. I'm not going to force anything. Okay. For me, I always tell people to look for clean setups. If it doesn't look clean, like some people may say that there's some order blocks and stuff in here, and there may be. We'll see how it plays out. But for me, it's not clean. It's just super choppy, price shut up. Okay. I'm not looking to trade anything that's not clean. That doesn't look worth it. Does that make sense? Let's see. I really don't know how it played out. Let's see. Yeah, see, it didn't even come anywhere near that. Now it kind of looks like it could be for sell, but again, we gotta look at higher time frames and all that. But again, does that kind of make sense how I break that down? When do you know to discard original trade idea and look for new trades like that? So let's go to GJ, right? So this was actually a perfect example. Excuse me. So when I saw this, right, I consider this the breaker structure, even though there was still structure above. Okay. So I put my fib on and everything like that. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Now, what I was waiting for was I figured that, okay, we could still get price to shoot up, break structure, and then still come back down because that would be a legit breaker structure. So when I saw this, I saw that price, shot up, boom, came to here. I went ahead and I just moved my fib. Oops. I went like that. Okay. Boom. And then price dropped, hit that price, and actually started shooting up. And from there, once I started seeing that price just kept creating higher highs and higher highs, that's when I realized, okay, this move is gone. Now, when it comes to any other trade, like let's say GA, okay, oops, right. So this trade here, if price didn't, like if I had my fib here, right, and this was the trade and price pulled back, or actually let's look at the EN. Yeah, oh no, not EN. EN actually hit two. GN, yeah. So this one actually missed my point of interest, and that's okay, right? It was super close, but again, I wasn't like watching it ready to jump in. I was just, I had my alerts set and stuff, and I was waiting for. Actually, I think I had a buy limit on this one, so I was a little upset. But anyway, price pushed down, shot up, and it hit take profit. Okay, so that's always a good thing. Right? If price hits your take profit or obviously your stop loss, then you should discard the trade. That's my recommendation. Okay, or also on GJ, I mean, technically it would have hit my take profit because I wouldn't have held for this long. But we just saw that price creating higher highs, higher highs, higher highs, right? It doesn't look like it's actually going to come back at that point. So if you see price just start, pretty much when you see price start to run away from your point of interest, where it looks like for it to actually come back to that point would be drastic, that's when you can consider, okay, let's discard it. Does that make sense? Drop some eights in the chat if that makes sense. Okay, cool. Right. So again, I would just say like when you start to see it essentially run away. Yeah, I was hurt by GN, but we saw GN buy, GA buy, EN buy. Last night was actually pretty good. Got this one as well. This was actually 5 minute or 10 minute. 10 minute. That was nice. EA. Oh, it actually came back. I didn't even see this one. This one I did miss. Me and Garrison missed this one. He told me that to look for the 5 minute. We were looking at the 5 minute order block, and I knew I had this marked up around the 786, and it played out. Okay. But sorry, I just wanted to break those down. But other than that, guys, that's pretty much all I have for you. Does anybody have any questions on top down analysis or anything I went over today? Feel free to ask now. This was a nice trade. If you guys are good, go and drop some nines in the chat. This helped me a lot. Awesome. I'm glad. Like I said, I can't believe I've never done a top down analysis, like breaking down how I look at the charts from each time frame class, right? So I'm glad I did it. Thanks, Recall. Awesome. How far should you look back when marking up? So that's a good question. So again, as an intraday perspective, I personally like to find entries on the hour and lower. Okay. So if I'm looking at the daily, I kind of broke it down. Let's go to GCAT because it's simpler, right? If I'm an intraday trader and I'm looking at this peak here, intraday means I'm trying to trade within a day, right? So this is February 24th. This was more than 2 months ago. I'm not going to be considered that, right? What's the point for me to be considered with that price point? Let's come down here, right? At the daily, here at this peak, this is April 20th. Okay, I can consider my range for right now. Maybe from here, this is still 9 days ago, right? I may not even be considered with this. That's why we got lower time frames. But at most, I'm gonna be considered with what price is doing here. Okay, on an intraday perspective. Now, yes, price could buy based off the higher time frame, but honestly, I'm looking for here. Okay, and we go down to the 4 hour and we start seeing that price again. There's no need for me to look back any further, other than for looking for like points of interest to buy off of. But look, we already broke these lows. Price is just downtrending. Okay, we're downtrending. Okay, does that kind of make sense? That kind of help you? So like again, I'm not looking at anything that doesn't matter, right? We're just straight downtrending, bearish. Okay, as an intraday perspective, I don't see any reason to buy. Okay, so I hope that kind of helps. Cool, awesome, awesome, guys. Cool. Well, like I said, that's pretty much all I had. I know we're 4 minutes early, but if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask. But if not, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you guys for hopping on, and I'll drop that list in the chat for you guys to use if you haven't screenshot it. But again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to message me after this call in the Discord. Shout me out on Instagram if you guys like. My name's there on my picture, or my video, excuse me. And yeah, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Oh, by the way, real quick before you hop off, there's gonna be a big announcement coming soon. Hopefully, guys, we've been working on some stuff in the background, and I just wanted to tell you guys that you guys are now on the call. So just stay tuned for some big announcements, guys. Awesome. All righty, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you.